when our identity was being denied, Americans did not, celebrate. They didn't sit around with hot dogs and go on fishing boats and set off little fireworks in their backyard, right? That would be insulting. And I think today we need to come to a realization of what our holidays are actually about. Because in times of tranquility and prosperity, these holidays can be times of celebration for what you have. But we aren't in those times. So these days need to be calls to action.
In April of 1776, the first shots of the American Revolution rang out. But the seeds of revolt were sown long before any armed conflict took place, with small bands of men organizing in secret to share their dissent and carrying out public acts of disobedience to espouse ideas that could land them in the gallows. At this time, over half the population did not want to get involved with either side, many even branding these patriots nothing more than radicals and traitors. But as always, fate is decided by the determined, and on July 4th, 1776, representatives from every state gathered in Philadelphia and ratified the Declaration of Independence. Although the war is long over, with its soldiers buried, the spirit of revolution is coming alive once again with its founders' sons.
So I think the number one question everyone wants to know is why you chose Philadelphia for this event.
This morning we begin with the deadly distinction for Philadelphia. The number of homicides in the city now tops Chicago, a city which is no stranger to violence.
I'm gonna shoot them niggas the fuck up. Fuck America!
Shootings in Philadelphia this year, which is up 42% from this time last year.
Despite the danger, the leader of Patriot Front explained to us the historical significance and why it was important to demonstrate in the city of Philadelphia on that day.
And we intended to march through the hallowed grounds of Independence Hall and draw a comparison between the struggles of the past and the struggles of the present, and as we would have it, the struggle of the future.
This is game time, boys. Let's have a seriousness, please. Memeing, jokes, fucking leave that outside.
Roger that, taking right, over.
Use the left lane to turn right onto North 22nd Street.
As we rode in the back of the truck, the mood was tense amongst the guys. Team leaders were issuing out orders and going over what they drilled earlier at camp in preparation for whatever might come.
Red, go back over that way. Yellow, come up here. Yellow. Red. Go, go, go! Yellow out. Yellow on me.
All right, so it's been a couple days since the march, and we're already starting to see a media hellstorm of a lot of lies about what actually happened at the march. So I just want to kind of recap of what actually happened and get your side of the story of what happened at the Philadelphia march.
Our march did proceed from the museum to City Hall to Independence Hall, and we managed to cross the entirety of downtown, and we had no qualms of being in the city for the length of time we were, which is well over an hour, I would say.
So the beginning of the march was cool and calm, and everything was going fine, just as planned.
Everything was pretty normal, pretty expected, everything we've dealt with prior.
We are home!
We had every knowledge that the police department was, of course, going to notice and respond to our actions, as they almost always do, usually a little bit after they begin.
What? Why are you calling the police?
Yeah.
What wrong is being done? And it wasn't until we got to the City Hall is when things really started to get maybe a little wild.
I wish you would.
Individual in a gray shirt who, you know, again, he approached us, he made a conscious decision to attack the march, and he set down his backpack.
And this is the individual that said, that we have quoted on film, saying, "I will kill you."
I will kill you!
And, you know, to bang, bang, kill us. And
Get the fuck out!
threw himself into the march and was simply pushed back out. He was very unsuccessful. Nobody was destroyed. Nobody was injured. There were 100 men bearing flags, and not a single one of them had a finger laid upon them. Not a single one of them ever had to vary his course because of any outside forces or any agitators, anything like that. Their march was entirely unaffected because of the exemplary restraint and professional conduct of our shield bearers.
We stay with our hate! Reclaim America! Reclaim America! Reclaim America! Reclaim America!
We are historical men. We are the men that we read about. And we are the men that our grandchildren will read about when they look up to their forefathers. We are surrounded by people who will never be remembered by their own children. But their grandchildren will look up to us because we are the ones forging a nation. We are the ones doing this and making our dreams a reality. And I engage in conversation with so many people who simply do not understand what they're missing. They will die and be forgotten. No one will ever forget what you are doing. Not your brothers, not your family, and not your children and their children and their children. What we are doing is immortal. Let these words enter you truly. And if you ever think that you have given enough, perhaps you will gaze sideways and you will see someone who has given everything. Sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. There is always more you can give. And what you put in is what you get out of this organization.
I'm MP advised. We have about 250 people. They were seen southbound on 3rd from Chestnut.
After marching around the gritty streets of Philly and finishing the planned route, it was time to wrap up the demonstration and head back to the designated pickup spot where trucks are already waiting.
Down in the parking lot, they're currently moving the 3 rental vehicles, the 10K truck. So they're leaving? Willie, mate, I'm not sure of that. They're starting to load up.
So they really Nazis? No, they white. They white.
It was at this point a group of protesters arrived as they were loading on the trucks to leave. Despite the aggression shown by them, PF members were instructed not to engage. Although the scene might have looked chaotic, the reality was just some threats, pushing, and 3 or 4 punches being thrown against the plexiglass shields. Although they all managed to load up and drive off unscathed, this was not the end of their harassment.
One out of the 3 trucks is northbound Delaware Ave. I'm going to follow that one. Have the rest of the officers just follow these trucks and just see where they go for now. All right, I'm going to have one stop.
Hi. Thanks for everybody coming out.
Finally, after waiting the whole night for an opportunity to catch any sort of slip-up from the PF members and finding none, the police had to resort to a stop-and-frisk traffic stop. Despite their best efforts, no arrests were made. And when nobody talked, everybody walked.
Because the demonstration were any complainants of any crimes actually being committed. 6 to win at this time, no.
They ordered everyone off the trucks and tried to even get them to go on foot through Philly's most ghetto areas that even those police themselves would not go through without armed backup. After the police vacated, thinking they had left them stranded in hostile territory, the group was able to reform and organize their own way out of the city.
Unfortunately, we're going through one of the most dangerous parts of Philly that is a little bit irate at us right now. So we cannot go on foot. The only resolve that we have right now is that we stay put here, and that anybody who has access to a vehicle at the exchange to go there, pick up as many vehicles as we can, drive back here, and get more. Now, I need to see a show of hands of how many people have a vehicle at the exchange and have their keys.
I do.
1, 2, everybody who has that, go over here right now.
Vehicles. Drivers, go over there.
Drivers with keys right now.
So let's talk about Charlottesville.
Okay.
You were present at the event?
Yes, I was.
Do you see any similarities between Charlottesville and the Philadelphia March? More importantly, maybe some of the police traps that were set at both marches.
Your fellow Americans are being assaulted? No response? A man of courage.
Yes, I certainly see a lot of growth when it comes to the fact that we were in a similarly oppositional setting, and we had, police which were trying to pit us against residents and pedestrians and anybody they could get their hands on, so that we would be in the shadow of this maladjusted legal system which could be turned into a weapon to silence us. But the defining variable, I think, is the activists. The variable is the communication, the organization, and the ability to prioritize safety while still having an objective of public showing, of still retaining the ability to tell our own story and to pursue our own message.
Would you say that America is currently in a revolutionary spirit?
I would say that revolutions take the form of their setting. Revolution, in my opinion, is a principle more than it is a tactic, which necessitates a new philosophy. We not only seek to exchange the structures which guide modern social, philosophical, legal, and political conduct, but we seek to dig to the core beliefs, the foundation of why the government is legitimate, why it ought to be, and why it should be there at all. We recognize the need for organizing and the need for a structured society, but we don't go so far as legitimizing conventional parties and conventional dynamics, which can only yield conventional results, which are by their very nature opposed to the revolutionary consciousness that we are making every effort to promote, to instill, to inspire, and to forge ourselves into physical blood and bone representatives of.
Well, I back that up 100%. I think you guys are setting the standard for the American nationalist scene, if you want to call it.
Yes.
I met quite a bit of your members out at the event. A very fine example, and there was no armchair idealists. All I saw there was men of action and men that are really taking it to the public sphere and seeking to effect real change.
I was going to capture them on video, and it's triggering as a black person to see white supremacists. Fuck out here, y'all.
Got a question? I'll answer. All whites are Nazis? Half of my grandparents and their friends died fighting Nazis. Okay.
This America.
Come on!
You niggas got smoke coming out the trucks and shit. This shit like a Call of Duty campaign out in this.